Hello, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and you are watching Tom Talks Rubbish. It's the place for interviews, wrestling reviews, and so much more.
You subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish. I highly recommend you subscribe here first.
So what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish. I'm back with a hangover and another interview with another member of the Cultaholic crew, Mr. Sam Driver.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm grand, mate. I'm grand. I've just had a pretty long day, but we're heading into the weekend. I've got to do Saturday tomorrow, and I get a couple of days off. Get a bit of chill on the go, and then AEW just out of nowhere, and then straight back into the fire.
What I was going to say, this will be going out after All Out and everything.
Yeah.
So after quite a while, because for once in my life, I'm actually ahead.
Yes, it's good to be ahead with content. It's good to have that backlog.
This will be going out October time.
Okay.
So
anything could have happened.
We may talk about All Out.
Yeah,
you know
but probably keep it a little bit more timeless, just so we can we're not just talking about things that I'm going to be sat here going like, and then this happens, and then Daniel Bryan debut, and he doesn't debut, and everybody be like, what's he talking about?
Exactly. It's like, I'm really scared. I've got an interview with Fraser coming out next week.
Yeah.
And we talked about, CM Punk's not going to debut.
Yeah. Well, all you got to do with those is we sometimes get it on some of our videos. It's to just throw up a little title that just says recording date and then the date it was recorded. And then people know then off the bat, we'll put it in the description because then they'll know it was recorded beforehand.
Yeah, I'll do that, or the pinned comment or something.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
All right. So anyway, we're here to talk about you, good sir, basically, really.
Yeah.
So I want to know, where did your wrestling fandom start off with?
So I'm quite similar to Ross in the way that my family didn't have Sky. We had a satellite dish, but it kind of got us access to certain channels, but we didn't have Sky digital, the proper big boy with the WWF on it and everything like that. So we had...
Were you a WCW child?
Yeah, so we had Cartoon Network, and at 9 p.m, Cartoon Network, about the hour leading up, so you'd have cartoons from about 8 till 9, and then at 9 o'clock, it would switch over, you'd see a blank screen with the TNT logo, and it would say, please stand by for transmission. And then the first thing you would see, if it wasn't an awful movie advert, would be the Nitro intro, and that was it. And they'd repeat the Monday's episode at 9 p.m. on the Friday nights, I believe, because my dad would let me stay up a bit later and watch it. And it was just the best.
Similar story in your Desert Island Graps.
Yeah, it's pretty much, it all started off then. My mum was always a big fan of The Undertaker, of Big Boss Man, Lex Luger. My mum really liked WWF when I had a couple of tapes and stuff, but she was a big WWF fan. And then we just kind of discovered WCW and went from there.
Fair enough. So everyone dogpiles on WCW a little bit because of how they ended.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
As a WCW child, do you think there was any saving it, or...
I think when you look back at that first Nitro, it's 45 minutes long. It's a TV hour. So a TV hour it's an hour of total time, including adverts. So, there'll be however many ad breaks. That's all slotted in. But 45 minutes, you start off with Jushin Liger versus Brian Pillman. You move on to Sting Flair. You have the arrival of Lex Luger. Everything just goes mental, and it's all in a shopping center. And, you've got just all these kind of just brilliant, excellent little matches just going on with random moments of insanity, like Hulk Hogan's pasta restaurant getting plugged. But right back then, even then, you still had we're out of time, folks, at the end. And it felt different, and it felt very unique for the time. But I don't know what it was. It grew too big, too fast. There was too many egos involved. And ultimately, just over 5 years later, it'd be gone, or 6 years later, it'd be gone. And it was just, yeah, it was so sad to see it kind of devolve. But then as a kid, I wasn't really dissecting that. It wasn't until much later that I kind of understood the gravity of how badly they dropped the ball with it. It was more that when I was a kid, it was like wrestling, and it was just fun. So back then I didn't so much mind. It got a bit, hard to watch because it was boring sometimes, but it was always wrestling, and it was always on at a set time, and we'd watch it, whether it was good or bad, and it would be fun. So it wasn't until later. But yeah, they could have really had something special, and they did for a small amount of time, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Fair enough. So you obviously continued to watch wrestling up until when exactly?
Is that
the right word?
Yeah, there's always a drop-off period with wrestling fans, usually anyway. And essentially, I think I got to about 2001. The invasion happened. WCW folded. I started getting more into WWF, like slowly before that, because we had got Sky. So I was there through like the tail end of the Attitude Era, and I was starting to watch both. And then it got interesting. And then slowly, once they became the only game in town, by about 2005, 2006, it started to wane. And then I think by about 2007, I stopped watching weekly. I'd still watch pay-per-views. And then by the time I think we got to 2008, 2009, I just checked out. There was just nothing really that WWE were doing that was entertaining me at the time. And I wasn't really that knowledgeable about independent wrestling and the wider world of wrestling. So I couldn't have just gone, I'm just going to watch New Japan. Plus, New Japan wasn't exactly doing too great around then either.
Wasn't this when Brock Lesnar won the belt and buggered off?
Yes, sort of around that period of time. So it wasn't like there was much else. Wrestling tends to move in these phases where there is a big boom period and a bit of a lull. But I think once there was no more competition, it really lulled, and it lulled hard until now. Essentially, we've had, the rise of the independent scene, and then the independent scene being cut down, and the rise of NXT. And now we have All Elite coming in to really get that fire going again.
So one thing I'm curious to know, as someone that had a drop-off period with wrestling, do you think with the internet and things like that being more widely available, is that the right phrase?
It's definitely more available than it was.
Do you think kids, whoever watches wrestling, are less likely to have a drop-off period?
No, I think there is always going to be this strange social pressure with wrestling that at some point as a child, somebody turns around to you and says the magical phrase, but it's all fake. And
I still get that now.
And this is it. You will always have it throughout your life, but it's that the first time somebody ridicules you for being a wrestling fan is when you really start to think about it. And it's like, well, there is a strange like social pressure where you can't be an open wrestling fan. You couldn't, or at least I don't know if it still exists, but you can't, you can go to the pub and talk to the bloke at the bar about football that you've never met before in your life, but you can't walk into the pub and go, "Did you see the Royal Rumble?" Because they'll look at you like, "Are you mad? It's all fake." And it's like, well, it's not fake. It's predetermined. It's staged. But by the time you get to that argument, they're already like laughing at you. So I think there comes a point when you kind of hit your teenage years that you've got to hide the fact you're a wrestling fan a little bit more. Simply because
for 2 years.
Yeah, I did for a long time. And as I said, I had a drop-off period, but I was lucky enough to have a sibling like who was a bit younger who was still watching. So I could still dip in and out when my brother was watching, and he would kind of fill me in on what was going on. I'd still pick up the games, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about wrestling a lot in my away period. I definitely thought about it a lot, and I had friends who were starting to train, and they were like, "You've got to get back into it. You've got to get back into it, and you've got to start watching again." And I think ultimately starting in this career was what really gave me the push to fully re-embrace wrestling and starting off, doing this sort of stuff. I'd had a period where I had to get back into it beforehand out of necessity because it was now part of my career. And then from there,
about 4 questions I had then.
You'll find I will just talk and talk and talk.
And this is the hard thing, because a comment I get a lot on my interviews, which is justified, is please don't interrupt people when they're monologuing. I'm
so bad for this. I don't know what it is. I just have a thing where I don't know. I people call me out on it all the time, and I always feel so terrible about it. I'm like, oh, you did it again, you did it again, you did it again.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of chime in, and it's like every time I do it, I'm like, oh God, no, I shouldn't have done that, but I've started now, so I may as well finish. Everybody else has stopped talking. But yeah, no, it's. I will just talk, so feel free to talk over me if I'm just kind of treading off into deeper territory. Go ham.
Okay, fair enough. So you said you got back into wrestling out of necessity because you started in your career.
Yes.
Was this for what culture, or was this for something else?
So yeah, basically I left uni. There weren't a lot of jobs in media. Me and my friends set up our own production company.
Yeah?
I did film and TV production. And I remember one of my lecturers, I was originally on a course called broadcast media production. And I remember one of my lecturers, Paul Baldwin, bless him, turned around to me one day and he said something about YouTube. And he went, "You're going to be working on that one day." And I was like, nah.
Was YouTube very big at this point?
Well, YouTube was growing. It was growing massively. This was like 2009-ish, back end of 2009. So I was fully set. You know, I was my own arse a little bit, and I was like, I'm going to go work in films. I'm going to do this, and of course, left uni, set up a production company. That all fell in, and then you know, we had just companies not paying us, and it ultimately led to us having to close that partnership down. So
you were a bit like ECW.
Sort of, yeah. But essentially,
to bring it back to wrestling talk. What
happened from there was I wound up applying for various jobs. I think I applied as a writer at What Culture first, and then from there, it didn't really work out. It wasn't something that we could have feasibly, met in the middle on because of time constraints and things like that. And I had like a job in the interim, just, working a call center to try and make enough money to make ends meet. And then eventually one day it was like, oh, we remember you said you did video stuff. And I was like, yeah. And we kind of got back in and had a chat. And then that's where it all started. And that's when I was like, okay, well, they do wrestling coverage. I'm going to be doing content about everything. I now have a license to get back into wrestling, and it's my job. And nobody can criticize me for it because it's my job. I get to talk about wrestling.
So the question I have was, you said you apply when applying for What Culture. Ross made it sound like you had to put down almost your special skills.
Yeah, you've got to kind of, I think for the writers especially, the job is strange doing, this sort of sphere of work. You need to have quite a bit of knowledge and you need to have not like certain opinions, but you need to be able to bounce around things and be like, okay, like what was the best match on this show? Like, why was it that match? Like, how would you justify that being the best match? And it's more like you have to really demonstrate your skills in how you present information and opinion, because a lot of the work in this sphere, again, it's all opinion based. So for me, I was lucky in the way that I was being hired for something totally new, and it was like, can we do some video stuff? Can we work together on this?
The website, correct?
It was the YouTube channel, the main one. We started off doing videos about films and stuff. And then from there, it was like, well, slowly we're going to be doing gaming ones. And it was like, okay, so we are going to come around to doing wrestling ones. And I had to kind of have fingers in a lot of pies when we were doing that sort of stuff. And then eventually the team grew and grew and grew. And now they've got a huge team over there doing, various stuff across various subjects.
Were you one of the first hires at What Culture?
No, they'd been around for a while, I think. And I don't think I was even the first guy who did video there. Like, they'd had videos in the past and they'd had some stuff. It was like all gameplay things and movie trailers. And because it was such a pop culture thing, there was so much in one place. But I think I was the first in-house, or at least one of the first in-house, because there was nobody else when I was there that was doing the video stuff. So we just kind of started off on this weird adventure, and it was like, let's do videos. Okay.
Do you find, with wrestling being a massive, massive part of your job, that you can't watch it for fun anymore?
This is something, again, we get asked quite a lot by people say, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And it's like, the thing is, with it, as you said, with it being our job, we watch wrestling quite a lot, and it absorbs a lot of our pattern of thought, and it's always there on the brain. You're always thinking about X, Y, Z. Like, you're always theorizing about things or thinking back to matches. And, you know, I might be doing a video on 1995 and I'll have got blasted with so much voiceover that it's just running through my head all day. And there's a point, you know, where you sat around talking and then all of a sudden you start using wrestling terminology and everybody's looking at you like, what are you talking about? And you're like, you know, you just sort of, you'll slip into conversations about wrestling and things like that. And everybody's looking at you like, okay. And it's like, I'm so sorry. This is just, my brain sometimes just can't leave work mode. But at the same time, it is important to have that, the wrestling that isn't work. And so for that now, like initially it was New Japan, but we started covering more New Japan. I still watch New Japan for fun, like for sure, whenever I can catch a show and I have the time to do so. But I've started watching CMLL because it's free on YouTube. I know that there's a lot of people.
That's Mexico, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who I tweeted out about CMLL and they were like, but AAA is better. And it's like, I never really had the chance to see AAA and I really want to. But CMLL, I only know because it was on YouTube. It was free. The commentary's in Spanish. I have no idea who any of these people are, but it's entertaining. And it's, you know, 2 hours a show, 2 shows a week or whatever. And it's up there for free for anybody to watch. And you can just go and not understand any of it, sit back with a beer and watch some guys do crazy things that physics shouldn't permit.
Okay. So you can, because some people that I have interviewed in the rest of the beer have said, no, if I switch wrestling on, work brain goes on immediately.
It is hard. I try to do things like I listen to podcasts. So at the minute I'm picking up on Jeff Jarrett and Conrad Thompson's podcast. I think it's fantastic. I really, really like it.
I really like the Kurt Angle one, by the way.
The Kurt Angle one's great as well, what I've heard of it. But what I try to do is I listen to that like either on the way home from work or the way to work, or I'll listen to it when I'm traveling on a train, and I'll just not have my phone like out. I'll just listen to it, and it's more road stories, and it's kind of nicer than kind of sitting and watching wrestling actively, because you're always like looking at it going, oh, okay, well, what's going to happen now? Oh, when they looked at the referee, oh, is this a work? Oh, is this a shoot? Oh, what's it? And you kind of, your brain does, it's sort of like when you learn how to study film and you start watching films and you're like, oh, well, that shot was nice. That shot, how long did that go on for?
I did media at college, so I know not quite as advanced as yourself, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like, I struggle to watch films now.
Well, this is it. It's the exact same thing, but applied to wrestling. So you overlook, you see too much into it and you start trying to read too much into it. And it's like, why can't I just shut you off?
It's like my carers hate going to the cinema with me.
Yeah.
Because I'll see a dodgy green screen, for example.
Like a little bit of a key left over.
And I'll go, that's an obvious green screen. Yeah. And I just get this dirty look as if to be like,
yeah, how dare you? Just enjoy it.
Watch the film. Anyway, so you were at what culture from
2014 to 2017? Yeah, November 2017. Yeah.
Was your first pay-per-view?
Our first pay-per-view was Cultaholic, yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, that's such a fanboy to know that.
Adam shaved bald.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
The first thing we did when we got into that office was cover the floor in. The first thing, when we got the keys to that office, the first video we shot in there was the floor getting covered in hair and shaving cream. And it just got, it was so messy. It was so messy. Like, we had the studio and everything, but within like a week of getting those keys, there was just hair and shaving cream everywhere. And it was like, we should have bought a tarp, but we can't afford a tarp. We try and clean up as much as we physically can. Because, we don't want the landlords to hate us any more than they probably do, because we're very loud. We're in all hours where,
stupid times of the morning.
We've got to be hard to deal with. So thankfully we have lovely neighbours who seem to understand, and our landlords seem to understand as well. So fingers crossed that all stays the same.
Okay, I wasn't quite sure where I was going with that question now. So obviously you left What Culture in 2017 as a collective,
Yes.
with Adam Blompier,
Yes,
as well. And then what happened. We're not going to go into that right now because he's covered it enough, and everyone else.
It's all out there, you know. And Adam's back on YouTube, and he's over there doing his due. You know, if you want to go see him and support him, he's over there doing his thing. And you know.
So my question for you is, was you coming over to Cultaholic to do more on-camera stuff, or did you start doing on-camera stuff because Adam left? So
as somebody who got into this,
hope that makes sense.
I understand completely. As somebody who got into media as a whole, to be like, I wanted to direct, and I was, you know, editing was really the thing I was actually good at, but I was always like, I want to direct and I want to write. But editing, I should have just lent into it. Editing was the thing that I was strongest at, and I should have gone with that, and I should have gone with that from the start. But ultimately, because I was always looking for behind the scenes roles, I've always been a very introverted person, and I'm quite private, and I'm quite, you know, reclusive and withdrawn, like even to the point where I barely go out sometimes, and I need to start, and I'm trying now. I'm really trying, because you know, we all go through periods where you just kind of want to withdraw. I'm trying my hardest to start getting ready to be a more outgoing person.
Question. So was 2020 your dream then, of not being able to leave the house?
Oh, mate, in a way. But like for that first 2 weeks, it was like, oh, and then very quickly it turned to hell. But I was lucky enough, I was staying with my girlfriend, so I was lucky enough that we had each other to talk to and stuff, because otherwise it would have been awful.
Yeah, I was lucky enough I still live at home.
Yeah.
And still had family and that to talk to.
Yeah.
And FaceTime with carers and stuff. But like, I have buddies that live in like warden assisted places.
Yeah.
Where they're in a flat pretty much on their own 24/7. I really need to stop talking about myself. I apologize.
Don't. But to go back, like essentially, as somebody who wanted to get into like the behind the scenes stuff, I was never, and as a very introverted person who was like, don't point a camera at me, I never really had it in me to be in front of camera. Now, I could do little things like reactions because, one, I got incredibly drunk before we went on camera together. Two, I knew that I'd always have a couple of other people to maybe bounce off. And I could just chime in and go, here's something I find funny, and then sit back and laugh at everybody else because they're funnier and easier on camera than I am. And it was nice to have that. But obviously, we didn't anticipate what was to come, and essentially it got to a point where, you know, Adam can only work so hard doing the voiceovers initially, and then it was like, okay, well, you know, Jack's got a thing, Ross has got a thing, Adam's got a thing, but we need maybe somebody to take over the 10 things you didn't know, and that was it. I think that's how it started. It was like, okay, well, I can give it a try. And I tried as hard as I could, and then I kind of got comfortable with voiceover, and it was like, it's cool.
How long did it take you to shoot your first voiceover?
Hours. You don't even want to know. It got to be hours. But I think the first time I was on camera with a script and I had to just go was, I think, graded for
Crown Jewel,
Crown Jewel, and I was drunk. I was very drunk. And I had a great time because it was just a massive house show and it was utterly insane. And so
was this 2018?
I think so, yeah. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, maybe we can do 205 and NXT. And I was like, yep. And that was so hard. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do as somebody who hates getting out of the comfort zone and coming out of the shell out of fear of, you know, just rejection and, oh God, who's this guy? And, you know, this isn't right. Like, it should be somebody else and, you know, X, Y, Z. But I don't know. I'm thankful for Adam even thinking, and for the other guys for even thinking that I could do something like that. Then? I think it was more of we'd be sat around because back then there were only 5 of us, and it was very slowly growing. But it was just such a small collective of us in one corner of an office that we just talked quite freely and loudly. And it was like, oh, well, we need somebody to do this. Are you okay to do that? Yeah. And then it was like, well, you did that. Maybe we could do this. And I was like, okay. But then I had to obviously start bringing it. And that was when it was like, right, you've really got to get out your shell now. You've really got to try go big, hands, eyes. It's one thing, even now, I'm still a bit like, and it's like, I need to be big with the eyes. I need to be doing everything that I possibly can to be engaging. Because if people are watching, then I at least owe it to them to try.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
So what was it that, let me start that question again.
No problem.
I'm very hungover. What was I going to say? Stupid brain. It's gone, Sam.
It's all right. We can go a little bit over as well. You don't need to worry about rushing. I think I've got a little bit extra time. So
what was I going to say? So yeah, it's brought up that you do on-camera stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do to prepare to do on-camera stuff? That was what I was looking for. Stupid brain.
So I think I was very lucky in the way that I've been, as an editor, I've been able to edit some very, very talented people through the years with, their skills in talking and entertaining. And I've been able to like get used to like rhythms and the way people talk and cadences. And I'm quite a monotone person, but I've got to try and get a bit more bouncy and get a bit higher and not be talking, down here and blah, 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 blah. So I kind of took in that, and I watched a lot of what Adam was doing, a lot of what Jack was doing, Ross especially, because Ross is just such a big character. And it's like,
one thing I found really surprising when I did my interview with Ross, was how quiet he is.
Ross is an incredibly reserved man, like straight up people.
Because as a fan of Cultaholic, all I know him from is it's John.
Yeah, and just the loud, brash, big character, and that's the thing. A lot of people are surprised by that.
When I was talking to him, and don't get me wrong, I'm really happy with how that interview turned out. It took me like 15 minutes to make him realize, at least this is in my mind, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, Ross, that I'm not gonna like say something nasty and come out of his shell.
No, this is the thing. It's just Ross is just a super chill, super reserved guy, and like even now I meet people and it's like, oh well, I bet Ross is like, good on night out, nice and Larry, and it's like he's just a really nice bloke.
Yeah,
he's just nice and quiet. He just kind of keeps himself to himself, and he does his due, and he gets on camera and he smashes it. And they're two completely separate people. It's amazing.
Yeah. So for saying that you did it like on camera, do you watch a lot of people back then to not imitate their style? That's the wrong word. But you know what I mean. It's
more, like through my experience in editing, I've edited so much, like just, ranging in content from news to lists to documentaries to like live wrestling. I've had. Oh yeah, you were the basically,
have been done for WCPW.
Little bit,
which we'll get into in a second.
Of course, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, basically, I think through editing, I'm lucky enough that I by necessity of the job, you do have to just recut and go back over that line. Is the pacing right? Is the time right? Is there too much of a gap here? Is that there? And you get sort of a sense for how it flows nicely. And then that was mainly what I was worrying about the most, was like, who's going to listen to me drone on for this long? So I've really got to try and understand how people are talking and the pacing of it and comedic timing and things like that. And I'm still learning. Every single time I get in front of a microphone, I'm still learning. I still know I've got a lot to develop, and I'm reading up a lot about narration and like voice techniques and things like that, and how I can look after my voice a bit better. Because I genuinely found that through doing this, it's something I really love, is voiceover. And one day,
just about to ask that.
Yeah, one day I'd love to do that.
On camera, do you enjoy doing on camera stuff, or is it sort of if we could get another presenter in to do it, I would happily.
Now that I am able to do this, and well, at least I hope I'm able to do this in the eyes of everybody, I love it, and I don't think I'd let that go for anything. If there's any chance where I can be on camera and just having fun and
even
enjoying it, even eating blended McDonald's, even getting married to a co-worker.
How horrible was that?
The Mackey's was bad. So the Mackey's was like, it blended and it turned into a consistency somewhere near like very, very, very thick porridge, except it smelled like Big Mac sauce. Like, I swear to God, Big Mac sauce is just blended McDonald's meals. Well, so do I. This is the problem. So I was like, force it down, force it down, force it down, force it down. And then I looked into it and there was just a pickle approaching my mouth. And I was like, oh, no. And then just chunks of meat. And I was like, no, 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 no. And I just took some of Jack's.
I can't remember.
I threw up. I think I always heave. I always heave. I mean, you saw the dog food video. But yeah, I think I threw up once. Or I definitely spit up once, and I think I threw up once in the McDonald's video. But the thing that I wasn't prepared for was that the NutriBullet was so good in its blending ability on some of it and so bad on the other. There were so many textures, and I'm bad with textures, but it was like sandy. So like between my teeth, it was like, yeah, I'd take a mouthful and I'd be like, why can't I get this flavor out my mouth? And I'd go like run to the bathroom, spit in the sink and swill out my mouth. And it, like 4 or 5 times I was like trying to swill my mouth out and eventually it was clear.
Word, but you know what I mean?
But in terms of the actual video, that was one take. I was only ever going to do that once. There was no way that if it was like, sorry, I'd be like, sorry, not happening again.
It's not happening.
Yeah, it's punishments are a one take, let's go.
What is your favourite thing to do on camera then? On camera or voiceover? So
voiceover, I'm really enjoying the documentary style stuff. I found that during lockdown, I was watching more and more channels like Nexpo with all the kind of creepy internet mysteries. And I was just watching these run times start to climb and climb and climb until we're getting to like 45 minutes. And it was like, this is doable. People are prepared to sit and watch this on YouTube. YouTube's getting in front of more people. It's getting onto more TVs through things like Fire Sticks and through casting. And it was like,
I watch you guys.
Yeah. And
off my Fire Stick on my TV.
That was it. We'd see so many people sending them in. I was like, well, maybe we can do it. And Justin is such an incredibly talented writer. And Adam and Justin, I think, were talking about ideas. And Justin come up with a documentary. And then it was like, I'll give it a try. And then from there, it was my more monotoniness came in handy because with documentaries, you don't need to be all like, whoa, and over the top. But at the same time, I love literally any chance to be on camera, anything that we can do together, especially whenever it's like a group thing, like the mukbang the other week or the other month. If you're watching this, sorry, because I forgot this is going out in October.
That video looked so fun.
It was honestly, I would love to be able to do that every month. If there's a way we can do that every month and turn it into like a regular podcast where we just catch up on each other's lives, I'd like that.
Something you missed during the pandemic, not being able to be on camera with other people.
We built up such a rapport together, I think, through working together before the pandemic that it was almost just natural. You'd reach out, you'd touch whoever was next to you, you'd interact, you'd grab each other, we'd be singing songs on guitar, and then all of a sudden, boom, you've all got to be separate, you've all got to work by webcam, and then it's this whole new process of how do you build a rapport with somebody that you're not with, even though you are friends and you do work together all the time and you already have that rapport in person.
Did you struggle with on Zoom stuff then?
Absolutely, like massively struggled with it. And then we got from there, I think we got back in, and then it was a whole new process again. We had to so you had to like relearn everything for Zoom. And then getting back in, it was like, well, first off, how do we interact again? Second, I was like, all of my edit projects for everything I've set up for Zoom now, we've got to change all this back. We've got to get all that back. We've got to get everything back. And we've got to all be like, back together and working as hard as we can. And this is why I treasure now, especially any chance we get to be on camera in multiples. Like if I could just reach out and grab and hug them every single time, I think I would.
Fair enough. So... obviously we've talked about what culture and Cultaholic quite a bit. But do you have any desire to do, because I know you set up a production company at one point, and you do more film, you did film stuff, etc. Do you have a desire to work in film?
I'd be very interested in maybe dipping my toe at some point back into some sort of critical sphere of film. So like to be able to sit and analyze films, because I'm a big believer and lover of world cinema. I particularly love older world cinema, but if I can go to any cinema that's just showing films I've never heard of, I will sit and try and see every single one. I used to work in a cinema as well, so like I just absorb and absorb and absorb. But I've got a few ideas for scripts that I'm still fleshing out. It's been a long time, but you've got to keep going back to them. And once they're ready, once they're good, and provided I have the money to bankroll it, because you ain't getting funding from anybody now.
I was going to say, that's one thing I've learned from doing YouTube. Equipment ain't cheap.
No, it's a lot, and even to hire the even things like the bursaries and grants they used to give out to filmmakers, they're just not anywhere near as much, or the programs aren't for people my age, or so it's something that I'm going to have to probably privately finance. But I've got a few other documentaries in the wrestling sphere I would one day love to do, one of which involves traveling to India. And it'll be a very, very strenuous logistical nightmare, but provided we could get everything in place and the financing was there and I was able to bankroll it myself, because I certainly wouldn't want Cultaholic taking a punt on like a vanity project like that, and having to bankroll that, me being insufferable the entire time. There are definitely things I still want to do in the production and critical sphere, but wrestling and Cultaholic in particular will always be my primary focus these days.
Fair enough. So we talked about watching wrestling for fun. Do you still have a passion for wrestling? Oh
yeah, all day. So like, one of my favorite things is whenever people are complaining about things, it's how everything in life turns into pro wrestling. So everything in life is pro wrestling, and the only thing in the world that isn't pro wrestling is pro wrestling, because really it's not even wrestling, which is the irony of it. But I still, I get excited if I go back and I watch some old New Japan. I get excited if I go back and look at, anything from my youth. I go back and I get excited watching last week's AEW Dynamite. There's always glimmers of it on every show.
For example, throwing this out there, we're recording this 2 days before All Out?
2 days before All Out, yeah.
So I am so hyped for that.
This is it. And it's like, I find that even if it's like a boring SmackDown and it's the same 5 matches you've seen over and over again, like my whole thing with looking at Graded in particular was that I want one good takeaway from every show, even if it's just, well, they didn't lose as quick this week. I want one positive takeaway that I can go away and be like, you know what, maybe that person's the future. Maybe this is a cool storyline. Maybe this could turn into something nice. And so my passion for it comes out of wanting it to be amazing, I think. Yeah. And wanting it to flourish and just seeing people be entertained. And I don't know, it's just a very romantic ideal in my head, I think.
You may not be able to answer this question because obviously you don't live in that world.
Yeah.
But do you think you'd still be as passionate about wrestling if you weren't working in it, reviewing it for YouTube?
I think I would have drifted back into wrestling at some point, certainly by now, if I hadn't already, with CM Punk returning. But I do think I would have probably... I'd like to have still been in the media industry, and I may be working in and around film criticism, but I don't think I would have been anywhere near as into wrestling as I am now. And I'm very thankful for the fact that I get to do what I do, and I am into wrestling, and it is the coolest subgenre, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And it's the boy. Wrestling is the best.
I think that's the takeaway from this interview of, if you're interested in wrestling, cool. Don't be ashamed.
That's it. And the other thing as well, don't just put down other promotions because they're not the promotion you like. Any company in the world of wrestling, any company, any extra company, whether it's an indie down your local bingo hall or, another company the size of AEW just rocking up, say, next Wednesday. And it's like, what? Any other place for people to work is a place for more people to work, which means there are more job openings, which means that more people are going to get called up from the indies to work in bigger companies, which means there are gaps on the indies for trainee wrestlers to move in and then move out of training school to then free up more space in training school. And it allows for more people to get into the industry, more people to make a full-time living in the industry, and it allows the industry to grow and flourish. And that's the thing. It's like, don't be ashamed of being a wrestling fan, but do not put down other wrestling fans because of the things they like.
It's like, and I'm not going to spend too long on this because I don't like being negative, but I can't look at Twitter the day after AEW is.
Yes.
Because I'm an AEW fan, right?
Yeah.
So all I'll see if I look at the replies on a, say for example, CM Punk coming back. Oh, they're not gonna, but this won't help them beat WWE in the ratings.
Well, it's just like, oh, well, all he talked about was WWE, and it's like, what do you want? What do you want? Well, like,
did he though?
No, he addressed it, and of course he was going to have to address it and bring it up. And that's the thing. It's like, you can't surely be looking at, I know WWE are the big bad. They are the evil empire in the industry.
They are the Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's what they are. And unfortunately, that's a reality. But hopefully the changing face of the wrestling industry is going to lead to industry-wide changes that stop the behavior of large-scale companies from getting too out of control. And I don't know. I'll never get the mentality of just being like, well, WWE sucks and well, AEW sucks. Just let people enjoy what they enjoy. If my nephew loves John Cena, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. He's not as good as Jungle Boy or whatever. It's like, enjoy it. That's cool. I'm happy you like wrestling. That's what I'm happy you like.
What wrestling would you be what? I'll try that question again. What wrestling do you watch on a weekly basis? And what wrestling do you think you would watch if you weren't covering it? So
I mainly, and this is just part of, because of my job, I'm constantly editing. And if I'm not editing, I'm doing news. If I'm not doing news, I'm doing voiceovers. And I'm not doing, and it's kind of chasing my own tail a lot. So the main thing for me is that I was the graded SmackDown correspondent. So I try and stick with SmackDown. I try and stay in the loop of everything that's happening there. I try and watch AEW as frequently as I can. And if I miss, say, 2 or 3 episodes, I'll wait till I've got like a Friday night spare and I'll just blast through them. But I think if I wasn't watching wrestling right now, if I wasn't working in the wrestling sphere right now, I'd probably be watching AEW. I will have dipped in and out of Raw maybe once or twice, but I'd maybe be more curious about AEW. Impact especially as well. Impact was another one that we could get on like the basic Sky package on Challenge TV or whatever it was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Me and my brother used to watch that a little bit, and my brother was really into Impact for a long time. So we probably would have still been chatting backwards and forwards about that if he was still into it a bit more. But I think
your brother still into wrestling?
I think he's got a big old adult life now. So I think he tries to stay on top of it, and he'll always like randomly message me. Like if something huge happens, he'd be like, wow, that happened. And I'm like, yeah, that happened. And he's like, oh, amazing. So he still, he'll still strut around being annoying and quoting Dash and Cody Rhodes, and he'll still just bust out. Yeah, he used to do Carlito and spit a bit of apple at you. He pulled the road dog or whatever, but I'm just thankful that I get to be into it still so that he can still hit me up and be like, what's happening?
How did he react to CM Punk's return?
I've not had a chance to talk to him about it yet because he's been off ill recently. So I've got to message him and find out.
Fair enough. So as we wrap this up, because we've been going for about an hour.
We can go a little more if you want. We've got 10, 15 more minutes.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I'm not going to lie. I'm going to do that. I'm hungover. I need some food.
Yeah. Well, don't let me keep you. Sorry, I'll talk and talk and talk.
No, dude, I'm good. But I've got another interview tonight with the Going in Raw boys.
Oh, really? Oh, Stephen Larson are the best.
I reached out to them and I was like, they won't say yeah.
They're genuinely 2 of the nicest people I've ever met. They are so nice. They're so sound, and they deserve all the love. Them, Brian Zane as well. Brian Zane's awesome. And
the Cultaholic boys and girls, obviously, because hopefully in the near future, because I tweeted her about it last night, I've got an interview coming out with Jen.
Yes.
Hopefully, and we'll work it out, hopefully.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to say is you guys have all been so nice to me about doing these interviews.
Yeah.
Giving up your time.
I think the thing to remember is like we're just a bunch of idiots who get to chat on the internet about wrestling. There's nothing particularly special about us. There's nothing particularly different about us, like to a point, where we weren't born with YouTube abilities instilled in our DNA.
No, I understand that,
but it's the
like.
I think the thing is,
sorry, man.
I think the thing what I was going to say was just that we've all started somewhere, and you know it's very hard to get that first break, and it's very hard to get that first leg up. And ultimately, I find it still baffling that people even want to talk to me. So for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'll talk to anybody. This is really cool.
Because I want to say thank you to you actually, because you tweeted out one of my interviews with my friend and their baby.
Yes, I remember that.
And you were like, mate, you're so good at these.
Yeah, you're so much more natural than any of us were. Like the thing with us initially, I mean, it was like getting lined up for like an interrogation. It was like, okay, here's the script, and we'd be cutting after every sentence. There was no kind of natural flow to it, and it took a lot of time to develop that. And then you're just tweeting out videos going, "How's this?" And I'm like, "What?"
I think the thing with me though is because when I first started my YouTube journey, that sounds so wanky.
It does sound wanky, but it is the only way you can kind of put it across, doesn't it?
You know what I mean?
It's like, anytime you got to talk to anybody about working on YouTube, it's like, well, how do you make money? And it's like, do you know ITV with adverts?
Do you find that you have to, because we talked about hiding being a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
When people ask you, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
People have different answers to this in the YouTube sphere. Some people say things like, I'm an accountant. Some people, because you get into that Uber and you know that if you say YouTube, that's going to become a conversation. But
I love Ross's line that he uses. I work in video production.
I work in video. He's not lying. He's not lying. He does produce videos. But I don't know. I feel that our mission throughout all of our adventures so far, regardless of where we've been, is to get across the fact that it's okay to be a wrestling fan. It's okay to be, as we've talked about, you should be able to go into a pub and go, did you see the Royal Rumble? But you can't. So you can go into a pub and you can show a video of one of us eating like a blended McDonald's and go, you've seen this idiot. Well, why is he doing that? And it's a conversation starter. But the whole thing was that it was more like, look, you shouldn't be ashamed of being a wrestling fan. So you should embrace it. So I shouldn't be ashamed to work on YouTube presenting wrestling. I should embrace it. And so I always, even though the conversation is 90% of the time, it's the same conversation. As I said, like, well, how does YouTube work? How does it make money? You make wrestling, what, like WWF and Hulk Hogan? It's important to just be proud of that. You know, I get to do the most crazy thing in the world. I get to sit and talk about and watch wrestling and play wrestling games and piss about on Skyrim in VR for 2-3 hours on a Thursday night or whatever. Like I am so lucky to get to do this that I can't help but be proud of the fact that I do this and spread the word that I have a stupid job like this, because anybody can do a stupid job like this. It's not as unattainable as people think. It just takes work and work and work and work and working out what works and taking falls and trying to get back up and putting yourself into it. And so I should, and I try to as much as I can, unless it is like 5:30 and I've been up for 32 hours on a weekend on a pay-per-view or whatever.
What's the longest you can stay up for a pay-per-view?
I think it was Mania 2019. I had
35 then?
Yeah, 35. I think I had an export error. And so I don't think I was able to sleep because I was up the night before. So I'd slept through the day, or at least as much as I could, got up in the early afternoon, got to work just to make sure everything was ready to go at about, 9 at night. So I'd been awake that entire time. Caned a load of Red Bull and loads of stuff like that,
no.
Which leads to a crash inevitably. Obviously did all the live reactions, did all the videos, recording everything. Then I think it was somebody did graded or whatever for it, and so I had to do the news, the what happened at the news, and then the edit for graded, and it just wouldn't export. I kept getting an error. And it was always halfway through. So I'm trying to make little fixes going, that was definitely the thing that's caused the error. No, it wasn't. And so I don't think I got home that day till about 9 a.m. And that was the longest I think I've had to go through. I think it might have even been early afternoon. I think it was a full 24 hours by the time I got in and I just went bang and hit the deck.
I'd be fair, you know?
It's bad, man. It's bad.
With All Out this weekend, I might cover it. I haven't made the decision yet.
Yeah.
But I know I'm not staying up for it.
Yeah.
Because, I know how the week will go.
Yeah.
If I do.
This is it.
If you do it, is your week a write-off then? So
I've tried to do various things, but the most recent time seems to have worked best, and that's that as much as it sucks, in the 3 days leading up to the pay-per-view or the 4 days leading up to the pay-per-view,
all night.
I try and stay up an extra hour per night until I'm up to like 3 and then going to work, like getting up for work at about 8. And just sort of getting up a little later, but staying up later at the same time. And that seems to have helped me a bit more this time. But I mean, Adam is the one to ask about this, because Adam is like, especially, he has just this ability to power through tiredness. And I'm like, second that you get me even slightly warm and it's a bit late at night, I'm just like a dad on a couch. I'm just like gone. Out cold,
about this.
Control in hand.
It's literally because he lives on his own.
Yeah.
Like, he could go to sleep at any time, but it's like...
Yeah, it's one of those things I find, living alone has helped more, but I live in an apartment building, so I've still got to sneak in all super quiet.
Yeah.
And
like, that must have been one of the things with lockdown. Like, working from home must have been horrible.
Yeah, it was primarily I couldn't work from my actual flat, so I had to travel halfway down the country to my girlfriend's to work from hers because we were going to isolate together anyway. She had much better internet, so I was able to piggyback off that internet. But then you have things like Tiger King thrown into the mix, and it's like, how do I edit when Tiger King is a thing? And then it becomes, it's 5:30, it's coming up on 6 o'clock. I should really stop working, but if I get these titles done now...
Do you struggle to switch off when it comes to work?
Yes, massively. Massively. I wouldn't say I'm a full-blown workaholic. I do appreciate time away from work, but at the same time, Cultaholic's our baby, and we need to make sure that Cultaholic is always... looked after and ready to go. And so, I've got still all the chat on my phone in case anybody needs me on a Sunday. And it's like, what's the setting for this? And what's that? Like, so on Sunday for All Out, I'm making sure before we even did this today that Tom's all set up, ready for the stream, and that everything should be pointing to the right direction. Yeah. And I'm going to make loads of notes about, you need to just make sure that's that, and this is this. And then I'm going to have to sit on the phone with him, make sure he's all set up, ready to go. And then it's going to be like, boom, right, sweet. I can have a can. I can sit and watch some wrestling and we're good to go.
Right. So as we wrap this up, because we've been going for about an hour. I've got another interview. And
you got to get some food in you, man. You're hanging out your ass.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, what... again, I should not do interviews hungover.
You get used to it. You get used to it. You're fine.
There. What is the match for you that's your favourite? Is a bit of a generic question, but like you watch it and you're instantly arrested. That sounds wrong, but a little kid again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So if I'm going back to that kind of feel, it's got to be.
Or that you can be invested in.
Like, I think in terms of like a classic match,
you watch it.
A classic match I'd go back to just watch for pure entertainment purposes is the 5-star Tiger Mask Dynamite Kids bout in New Japan way back in the day. That is a beauty. They're doing things that are years ahead of their time. But really, when I want that nostalgia hit, as basic as this answer is, it's got to be
WrestleMania X7,
TLC 2 or Austin Rock 2.
I knew that was coming
because that's my era, man, and that's it. And it's just like the second that I put that pay-per-view on, I'm a kid again. That's it. Like, I'm just a kid again.
I'm not old enough to appreciate WrestleMania X7.
Yeah,
because I got into wrestling in 2009.
Yes,
I know. I had a terrible era.
Still plenty of good wrestling to come, though. So you didn't miss out.
Yeah, but like. Do you think that pay-per-view would be as widely, not criticised, that's the wrong word, loved?
Yes.
If people didn't grow up on it?
It's a difficult one because, and this is a theory that's been floated around, and I'm going to steal it again. I'll mention again, Conrad Thompson, Jeff Jarrett's podcast. He mentioned this on the episode I was listening to last, and it's... that somebody said to him that they felt that everybody who gets into wrestling those first 10 years that they're a wrestling fan are their era. And they spend the rest of their like careers as wrestling fans, I guess, like longing for those days again. And for me growing up in the 90s, it's hard to kind of argue with that simply because, I mean, we had Stone Cold Steve Austin, we had The Rock, we had the Triple H coming through, we had Shawn Michaels, we had the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys, and it was just, I've still got all my figures, man. Like I can just look at one of those things, and it's just all the memories of playing with them. Yeah, it's like through there somewhere in like the prop cupboard.
Find it. I'm just genuinely curious.
Yeah, I've got
one thing I was doing today whilst trying to recover.
Yes,
was watching your Desert Island Graps back.
Right. Okay.
And obviously the figures come out.
Yeah, Tom got me to get the figures out.
Was that planned?
No, the figures were in the office simply because I was like, well, we don't really have anything we can afford to buy to put in the office. So let's just put some wrestling figures around and leave it there. And then obviously we grew a bit more, and then they all went in the bag again. And I just kind of forgot that they were there. And then Tom mentioned it and I got them out. But I've also got, they're not built or anything. I don't have really space to build them back home. But I've got my brother's original Nitro playset ring somewhere with the spongy middle bit with the, like you throw a figure down, it go like, ow, and all that stuff. And the entrance way. I've got the Elimination Chamber. I've got an Attitude Era, like carry case ring where the top pops off. The turnbuckles come out of the middle and you can put all the figures in to store them. That was cool. But I collect loads. I've got Tiger Mask. I've got loads of stuff like that. But to go back to it, I do think that, yeah, if X7 was to happen today, and the wrestling industry was how it was today, I don't think it would be quite as shocking in terms of like the TLC moments, even though there are still some unbelievable spots in that match. It would be quite like subdued compared to how it's seen. Yeah. But at the same time, I still think there's so much on that card that you can't argue with, that it would still stand up, but it would just be a little bit more disconnected maybe, because there'd be a lot of that round anyway right now.
Look, normally the next question I ask is your favorite pay-per-view of all time. But judging by how you've just spoken about X7, it's X7, isn't it?
If I've got to give it a second one, I will straight up say, just out of curiosity, like out of like an interest side of it, one of the most important pay-per-views to me will always be Wrestle Kingdom 9, simply because that was when I got serious about being a New Japan fan. I'd seen little bits here and there. I didn't really know how to watch it. And then they were like, oh, there's English commentary. And it was like, boom, sweet, I can get into this.
Was it JR on commentary?
It was JR and Matt Stryker, I believe. It was a very odd pairing.
But a very good pairing, because this is when JR was still...
Yeah, it was all kind of a bit...
Don't get me wrong, I love JR in AEW. That's an unpopular opinion.
I just love JR full stop. I think he's great.
So, to end this, I ask, the question I always end my interviews on is, what is one video either that you edited or presented on that you're like, that video can go, never again, blah, blah, blah. And then what is one that if people were to want to know about your editing style or your presenting style, that you would encourage them to check out?
I'd say there's not really a specific video that stands out, but definitely around the time I was starting on camera, there's a lot of very nervous Sam kind of looking like he's being held in a hostage video, just being all like, and then this happens, and then there's the pin, and you know, that kind of stuff I look back on now, and it's funny to look back on because it's like, oh, I really have developed. This is quite cool. But I would, you know, any one of those just gone. But in terms of you what?
I'm the same with that because I started doing AEW Dynamite reviews during the pandemic. And I watch them back now, and I'm like, ew.
But no. It's important to recognize it though as growth, because that's what it is. It's the same as any other skill or hobby. You are honing it and honing it and honing it like you're making a samurai sword. And then eventually one day, and I pray one day I can be sharp and good at like really, really, solid at this.
I feel like that because I watched my most recent one back.
Yeah.
for, I think it was Homecoming. I can't remember. And I was like, you know what? I'm actually pleased with that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, when you can look back at it and you're like, you know what, I'm chuffed. I've actually come a long way. It's that good little feeling, isn't it? You kind of get it, right there.
So, do you have a video that you're like that for, and people should check out?
I think if you, I don't think I'll recommend a specific one because I love them all so much, and I'm so thankful that I get to do them. But the War Stories series in particular, the first episode, I think I edited in full, and I was very proud of that. But as they develop, they get a lot better in terms of the presenting style from me. I really tried to step that up, and I'm proud of those. They're informative, they're serious, which is something we hadn't really done a lot of. And it's sort of carved out a new little niche for us in a way that we can do these kind of, like deep dive examinations of serious happenings, or we can look at something from more of an educational standpoint, and something that people who don't watch wrestling, maybe who are interested in learning more about wrestling from the past, maybe who weren't around in certain eras, can watch the video, learn everything they need to know, and be happy that they've received, because Justin tries his hardest to source everything as best he can. He gets reviews from the time, he gets as much information as he can before he even starts writing the scripts, that you just have these kind of nice little packages of knowledge and information. And I'm just very blessed that I get to be the person who does the talking. Fantastic really cool. Jobs from all of the editors that have been involved with them so far, especially the other series we've got, which is similar. We've got another documentary series called Behind the Match, and Matt Stewart, one of our editors, he has been absolutely nailing those edits.
I don't know if he's mentioned it to you.
Yeah,
he's coming on my channel next week.
Oh, is he? Awesome. That's really cool. He's got like loads of Star Wars stuff on the go as well. Like he does all sorts of stuff like that. So you should definitely ask him about that.
I just sent him a message on Twitter.
Yeah.
For some reason, he follows me. And it was like, I'm just going to ask. If he says no, he says no. Like, and he said, yeah. So as we wrap this up, Sam, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for having me on, honestly. It's still, as I said, it bewilders me that anybody would want to talk to me in the first place. So
I apologize for being such a hungover mess.
Mate, what are you on about? We're from Newcastle. It's a badge of honour. Just calm down. Be hungover. It's all right.
When I woke up this morning, and because I set a lot of reminders on my Alexa to remind me of interviews, and I checked my reminders this morning, and I was like, oh fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I've been there before. I've definitely been there before.
Right. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Obviously, check out the Cultaholic crew, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Catch you later.